and welcome back to our latest episode of the Growth Playbook with myself, Kim Clark, and my dad, Alan Bolio. As mentioned in last week's episode, if you tuned in, we're going to continue the conversation where we dive into some key principles that are necessary for intentionally growing your business with the mindset of wanting to ultimately have a positive impact on the world around you while making money along the way. The two are not mutually exclusive. And it's really just a certain psychology that you have as you are building and growing this business of yours. So, Dad, nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's nice to see you too, dear daughter. And just a reminder to folks, this is from reading Another Way, which is the name of the book by Dave Wharton and Bo Burlingham, two gentlemen I know and respect. Bo was an editor at Inc., and Dave had a strong VC background and grew into an evergreen advocate. And it's a very fascinating journey and very instructive of its own, let alone the principles behind becoming what he calls evergreen and the 9 rules of innovation that he has in the book. Very, very applicable, very real is a good way to put it. Um, Basically, anything's possible, and capitalism is a good thing.
I like it and
Me too.
agree.
Yeah, me too. All right, so thanks, Dave. Thank you, Bo, for putting the time into the book. Let's hope that we can help many people together find a way. Um, so let's get started. Number one on the list was the centered on productive services, customers, employees, community, and it does not equal uh, unprofitable and not growing. I think I said that right. And that's key. Um, Because, and this is why key, a company that's not profitable is going to die.
Yeah.
A company that's not profitable can't help more people. It can't even keep the people that it has. A company that is not growing is probably also going to die. It's very hard to, I don't believe that it has to be that way. You know, the adage that we've grown up with is if you're not growing, you're dying. Well, the guy who owns a corner store is not growing, but he's not dying. You know, it's some businesses, if you don't grow, you're going to die, mostly because competitors are going to come and step all over you and that sort of stuff. Um, Landscape companies, we know a very successful one through a mutual friend, good friend, and growing company. Uh, but if he stopped growing and stayed where he's at, he's not going to die. You know, so these companies are growing because they want to grow, because they want to make a difference in the world and to everybody around them. And you and I both like growing companies. We both favor that and want to help companies do that, and it's become something that we've given a good part of our lives to is to help companies grow. So it's not evil;
Yep.
it's just not mandatory. it's just it's just not. But you don't have to give it up to be a company that cares about your customers, your people, your product, and the community around you. You know, Brian and I once did a survey of Vistage members about what drove them. And one of the top 4 reasons that they did what they did as leaders, often owners, if not just the leaders of the company, was that to make a difference in the community.
Mm.
It's amazing how many people are driven by that. And you don't often find that in a venture capitalist world. That's not where the focus is. Focus is grow as fast as you possibly can, not make a difference in the community. Um, so it just it's a mindset, and it's the first things are focused on, but you don't lose track of the profitability and the growth. I think that's pretty simple and easy to grasp. Although it's very unusual in a lot of world that you and I have been part of in the last couple of years. Um, it's just different. Okay.
Yeah, and I see, if I may just add to that really quickly, as I mentioned in the introduction, and you just confirmed that they're not mutually exclusive, there are key business strategies to employ to attain everything that you just described. I think back to when you have your sales, your marketing, and your financial operations, all of it working in tandem together, you can grow a very profitable business while still the culture, your purpose, your core values, your intention is focused on having that positive impact on the world around you. So if somebody sees them as mutually exclusive, I would challenge that thought process to why do you see them as mutually exclusive, or is it because you're operating in department silos and you don't have the right framework or
Hmm.
structure in place within the business to reach that ultimate goal that you were just talking about?
That's true. Not sharing the same purpose and vision, and not coordinated to achieve that purpose and vision. Excellent. The second point is there's an article in Harvard Business Review for anybody who wants to Google that down through HBR, that these long-lasting companies use self-financing growth rates. Okay, any growth is come from financing they derive themselves, which we know about because that's what we've done at ITR for years. Um, Now that can sound like, all right, so you're going to get 7% growth on a good year, while other companies are getting 15 because you're constrained by capital. And uh, not always the case. Read the book, and you'll find that a lot of companies that feel like they're constrained because it's out of profits, it's self-funding, get a
Mm,
sustainable, so that they don't get those big dips. They don't have those years with the negative numbers, and they don't have the big disruptions. It's just a measured pace. What's that? The turtle in the hare?
mm,
You can mock the turtle, but he wins. you
yeah,
know. And it's really not a turtle. It's just a measured pace of self-financing, which is a discipline. You have to be very disciplined with your money when you do that. And you can't go off with flights of fancy when you do that, right? And go chasing after shiny. Let's go here. No, let's go here. That's going to put you out of business if you're self-financing. It's a disciplined approach, but it is an approach that works.
yeah. And that's what I have all over my website too, is building a sustainable growth engine, because that's exactly it. It's strategy, discipline, focus within your business that is practiced across the entire business, that allows you to create that sustainable growth year after year.
Yeah, exactly so. And it's fun to see companies do that. It's fun to do it. Uh, Stable long-term profitability is another tenet of this built to last. Evergreen built to last, and uh, you're not going to always achieve the same percent of profitability each year, but the goal is to be profitable each year because your future depends on it. You don't let altruism uh, take your eye off the goal of you need to have profits to experiment, to change, to grow, to do good in the community, take care of your people, and all the rest of that. Now, we've touched upon it, but I didn't want to make it sound like profit took a back seat. It was not
Mhm.
an item that can be dispensed with. Um, And profitability to a long-term company means it doesn't have to be hit it out of the ballpark, make Wall Street go, wow, how'd you do that? It could make somebody like you and I go, nice, year after
Yeah.
year, nice, congratulations. So you don't get the stars on Wall Street, you don't get invited onto Fox News or MSNBC, you don't get any of that, but you're just building something each year through profit. And I think that's a very nice thing. It's not a profit for profit's sake, but it certainly doesn't deny the necessity of profits as we go forward. Which see previous discussion, few episodes ago on taxes, and you'll understand.
I think in my simpleton brain, I look at it as fiscal responsibility of
Oh,
a
that's good.
business. It's the business's fiscal responsibility to maintain a certain level of profitability so that way it can continue to invest back in itself. It's my job at the home, or Frank's and my job at home, to be fiscally responsible so we can continue to fund future growth for the family and advancement for the family. So I just look at it as it's being fiscally responsible while still having a positive impact in the world around you. So I can still do things for charity. I can donate my time if I wanted to. Perhaps maybe profits were a little bit lower for my family this year than they were next year, but I can, instead of investing dollars, try to find some other way to give back and benefit the community. So I think it's just that balance that we employ in our daily lives, just being implemented now in more of a business setting.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it's a sweet thing when that happens. Um, Now, the next one is it's about a willingness to adapt and change. And it's funny. That sounds so simple, but not so, is it?
No, no, I used to hate change. I learned quickly that's not the right way to be.
Yeah, no, no, exactly right. And it can happen in any industry and at really any age. But if I may be so bold, and you tell me I'm wrong, I'm fine. It can be easier the older you get to resist the change because it means learning new things. It can be scary, it's uncertain, and you're comfortable, you're making a good living, and things are rolling along. And why would you want to disrupt or even change this part of the business when in fact it's absolutely necessary that you do so? Um,
I
we have.
agree. I think it's partly age could play a role into it, I suppose. You said it first, so I'm allowed to follow up with that. Um, and secondly, it could be a personality trait. I used to be more risk adverse, or growing up with, I don't know, around some engineers where things work in a certain order of operations. And when they work in said order of operations, you get X result and it's consistent, and anything beyond this is not something worth trying because this is a tried and true proven process that I know I get X results. So I think part of it is also just a personality trait, but it is so important to adopt the belief that you need to personally and professionally grow to accept, not even accept, but look forward to change, because in change comes so many new opportunities that you miss out on if you are too steadfast in your old ways.
That's right. You're absolutely right. And a leader then, I'm going to add on, I think, tell me if you think I've gone too far, must be willing, even in the setting that we're talking about, this stable built to last, and last, uh, company has to be willing to accept risk. When you're
Mm,
not willing to accept risk anymore, you're pretty much cooked.
yeah. Yeah, and that was actually something that you and I, even just to take it more personally, you and I had a conversation on when I decided to retire for with you. And as I've been telling my clients, I retired from the field to be a coach for all the players still in the game. That's how I've been liking to look at it. And you and I had a conversation around the risk of that, and no longer in the protection of working for a firm or some other organization. And it is, you have to be willing to take on that risk and understand that the reward can be so much greater than the risk. Like, it was a big risk, but I am loving every conversation I have with every one of my clients and feel so much more fulfilled and rewarded every day, because I'm passionate about what we do, which is what, excuse me, we were talking about before, is needing that passion for what you do and the impact that you're having on the world. So I think it all ends up playing back into to each other.
Yeah, I think so too. And you remember that farm I was telling you about last week? That old farm, I think in Virginia, I believe that the family owned, and how
Yes.
they survive all these years. Well, they still have a part that does a little farming just for tradition's sake. But over the years, they have changed. They now have a part of the farm that makes ice cream on the property. It's not farming, they make ice cream. Then they have another part, I believe, is a 9-hole golf course. And they have another part that, they have changed over time. And what they're doing now is not what they were doing 50 years ago, which is not what they were doing 100 years ago, because they had to, and you'll like this, know what the market wanted and adapt to that market and what their assets were suited for. And how many people don't do that? I mean, the companies go out of business because they refuse to acknowledge the times and that they need to change. The adage of the last buggy whip manufacturer, but there are real companies that do that. They just slowly starve to death because their clients find them irrelevant or their clients have gone irrelevant, one or the other. That willingness to change is a necessity for survival. And to be able to do so for hundreds of years. That other one that I mentioned, that's part of Tugboat, that's 300 years old, they started as a paper company. Uh, they don't make paper anymore. And I won't get into what they actually do make, but they don't make paper anymore. And they just have learned and evolved as time has gone on. So, which is hard for some folks, but it's necessary.
Definitely necessary, crucial to survival and thriving, not just surviving, but thriving. And I think in my head with that story that you just gave, Dad, moved on to adaptability, because I think a trap that a lot of leaders fall into is that they think they know what the market wants from them instead of finding out truly what it is that the market is asking for them. So I think that's another pitfall that some may fall into, is saying, well, because my farm is no longer going to be thriving because of these environments, the next thing I'm going to do is a carnival because I have all the space and I can do this, then I can do the horse, I'll do a petting zoo or something on my farm. But if that's not what they did because they were actively listening to the marketplace around them and what they wanted from them, I think that's another crucial step that people don't even realize that they're doing. Because I find that when I ask people, I say, well, what are your differentiators? And they'll tell me. And I'll ask them, well, is that what your customers would say if I talk to your customers? And so I think it's just when you're in the business too long, you can start to make assumptions about your marketplace, and therefore your change or adaptability may not have as big of a positive impact as you need because it wasn't executed correctly.
Let's do an episode on that sometime. I think that's looking having an expert decide what the market wants has been known to work. Steve Jobs. But so
Mm.
many times companies will design something in their head because that's what the market wants, just to find out the market goes, no, no. Wrong price point, too many gizmos, not enough gizmos, whatever. I don't know if that's the front end or back end of marketing, but that's what part of what marketing does, right? Find out what the market wants
Yeah.
and meet the market as opposed to invent the market. Some people can invent it, see Steve Jobs, but not everybody is Steve Jobs, who was not a nice guy. So
So we're glad.
that's right. So yeah, that adaptability, I like that a lot. And that can lead us into the next one, which is constant innovation and experiments. They're self-funding experiments, and you're going to read the 9 principles of innovation as you read the book, but it is the emphasis is on the word constant, and the word that's not in that phrase is encouraging people to experiment. Uh, Good leaders will encourage their people to be thinking of a different way, a better way, and to some extent we try to do that at ITR, but it is constant experiments that are self-funded. And and there's so much more of that I don't want to get into because it'll become too long. But if your company, if you're listening to us and your company is not constantly experimenting with new product, new service, and I don't mean launch it, I mean experiment. with a couple clients or with a very small market, or use a pseudonym and do it in a different state, but, experiment so that you don't look like somebody who's constantly running in six directions and delivering things that your customers don't want. A careful, methodical, constant experimentation. You may find, and I knew a guy, he worked for a company, he worked for an organization where different companies got together and they developed new stuff all the time. And it was funded by this organization. And he said, the organization knows that 9 out of 10 of these are going to flop, but they want us to keep trying and experimenting till we find the one. And that's what these companies are doing, right? They don't expect everyone to win. They have no expectation of that, but they know they'll never find the winners if they don't try. And
Yeah.
if they demand that everyone be a winner, then people are afraid to try. Because if the boss holds it against me because I developed 3 dogs in a row, then I better not try that anymore. Could be my job. As opposed to, what did we learn? What we talked about, a couple episodes, fail fast, fail forward. What did we learn? And go from there.
Yeah. No, I agree on all the points.
Good. I like it when we don't argue.
Yeah, especially in recordings.
Yeah, that's right. Especially in recordings. Now you read the things last week from General McChrystal's book. I'll read them again. Adaptability is certainly what we've been talking about. Information transparency we haven't touched on yet. When senior leadership feels it needs to withhold things from the troops, that can get to be a problem. Now, obviously, General McChrystal knew there were times he could not share information with everybody, but in his business practice, because he became a consulting firm, which is where I met him. He was actually consulting at the same time that I was consulting with at Scott's Miracle-Gro.
Mm.
And heck of a nice guy. I mean, immediately just an unpretentious, very nice human being. And he invited me to speak at his firm, his consulting firm in the Washington area. So I got to know more and knew his people. And I got to see him in action, and sharing information and transparency was certainly his hallmark. He did not play it close to the vest and feel like they didn't have a need to know, a right to know, and any of that sort of stuff. He was not that kind of guy at all. Uh, Refreshing, because a lot of
Mm.
people feel like information's not to be shared. Another great example of that, by the way, is Jack Stack. You know Jack Stack. I
Yes.
know
Yeah.
Jack and I go back a long ways. He built his great game of business along one of the precepts is sharing of information. Another company that I knew years ago through Vistage, they did the same thing. They posted things up for employees to read. They were family owned. It wasn't like the employees needed to know. They just wanted the employees to know. So they posted things up there and shared all kinds of information. And it's a really good way to get people involved, stay involved, and encouraged by the results, or go, oh, we better improve production on this line because this line's not performing the way that it should, as opposed to all of a sudden hearing about some layoffs. It's a really powerful thing that he did. And his third point about uh, rapid decentralized decision making at the lowest possible level. Man, Kim, you and I both know how tough that can be for people. That means I give up the control. That means I give up the reins. That means I'm not in charge of everything. Yep, that's about it. Yep, you described
Yep.
it perfectly.
Good job.
Either you trust your people or you don't, right?
Yeah.
And you're either raising them up to be trusted, and if they're not going to make decisions, it's because they're afraid of you. And that's another problem. But I think it's a great way to go. And it's not hard to practice once you start practicing it, but to let go and to get that started, it's got to be very difficult, especially if, and again, I can think of companies that have gone through this. You have built the company using this formula, and to let you start changing with the formula is very difficult. And it is. There's a famous story about Kentucky Fried Chicken. I think it was Kentucky, or it was
I think
Chick-fil-A,
so.
one of them. one of them wanting to change the formula. You can do anything you want, but don't change the gravy, you know?
Yeah.
Which makes sense. But the first part, you can do anything you want, is often the forgotten part, right?
Yeah.
The logo changes. Not okay. We've gone to marketing. We need more stores in this city. Okay, you don't have to prove it to me. All that kind of stuff. If it doesn't work, we'll have a conversation. But that's really the decentralized decision making. I gotta think that in the military world, the letting the second lieutenant who's leading a squad decide, how best to set up his troops is much better than having the colonel back at HQ deciding how to set up the troops. And it's got to come from that, right?
I
Uh,
would think so, but the same vein, I would think somewhat this decentralized decision making may be somewhat atypical in other military situations. So I like that I could find it being better in those same military situations. But in my mind, military is very much I report up to this person and this person reports to that person and and I don't need to know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I just know I need to go do this. Versus I'm Frank, who's the man on the ground, and I get to decide what I do in this instance. But certainly, if I'm told that I need to do X, then I need to do X, regardless if I think I should be doing Y instead. So I find it very refreshing that this general had the vision to be able to see the benefit of this kind of a empowerment across people that work with him.
yeah, and certainly you're right. I mean, if they say you hold this, for Frank, you hold this station at all costs, or you under no condition do you let somebody breach this line, then that's the order. But how they do it, and I think what General McChrystal was saying was that sometimes good to let them know why that
mm.
order's there. We've gotten reports that there will be increased activity, and uh, we're on high alert because, rather than just remind them every day, don't let anybody pass. So,
I love giving the why. I
yeah.
have done that throughout my entire leadership when I was still on the field, if you will, and had a team. And I still do that now in my coaching sessions where I will always give the why behind a question that I ask or a do out that I assign. That way we can talk about it too, because my answer isn't always the best, or my direction, there may be a better way of doing something that I'm not aware of. So if I can share why I'm asking something be done or why I'm doing something the way that I'm doing it, it opens opportunity for communication to come back to me from the team members to say, well, have you considered doing it this way? I think about one of my team members, Mr. Hawks, Jason on my team is very notorious for always coming back to me and with ideas of better ways of doing things. But I appreciated that because he was right. He oftentimes had a more effective, efficient, operational process that could get something done that made it life easier for the team because he lived in the weeds. To your point of the boots on the ground versus the colonel, I wasn't living in the weeds. And so I wouldn't see the 30 details that he saw living in the weeds. So empowerment, transparency, and always giving the why fosters that open communication across the different tiers of management and employees too.
Yes, as opposed to the leaders who go, don't you dare deviate. That really inspires people to our previous
Yeah, or
episode.
prove me wrong.
Yeah, prove me you're wrong. Yeah, exactly. So the last subject we brought up, and it won't take long, is governance. Uh, which is the whole organization and running the organization and responsibilities within the organization. That has to be adaptable too. We talked about the multi-family, how the family grew and grew and grew. How on earth do you run a organization, even a large organization with that many owners? And it wasn't just there. I've run into this in my career, and I don't know how many circumstances, maybe a dozen or so, where I'd be brought in to talk at uh, family meetings, and I think to myself, how do these people ever get anything done? But what it really was, I was talking to a family meeting and let them know what's happening in the economy, but I would find out there's a trust. These people would vote on who the trustees were going to be for the next couple of years. It was rotating on and off. So they gave up their voting rights by voting this person in. So they had elected representatives, a manageable group of 10 or 12 people who would make the decisions over a period of time, people rolling on and off, knowing that these people, like a board of directors, were answerable to the shareholders and could be held accountable for their answers, for their decisions that they made. So they weren't making decisions in a vacuum, but neither were they taking a poll of everybody. So in a lot of these companies, to take a poll of everybody would be nonsensical. You have to have
Yes.
delegated responsibility upward also, as well as downward, and know that that's the only way that it works. Imagine having 1,000 family members trying to make a decision.
No.
Imagine having our family all get together and try to make a decision.
No, it would need an agenda.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe a
that's
survey.
right. That's right.
Majority vote rules.
So governance is a big part of this, and how you run your company and all the rest of that. It's really an amazing thing. And these people face the same problems all businesses do. I just want to give one example, then I'll be quiet, I promise. Uh, Large company, multinational, lots of employees, and we live in a society, this was not long ago, we live in a society where everybody's got an opinion, and it often comes into the office, and disagreements and hard feelings and different things can come in to a company that way, and t-shirts start showing up with sayings and all the rest of that stuff. And he said, in our company, we have a very, very important rule. He said, you can have whatever bumper sticker you want on your car stays in the parking lot. You're all welcome here. Everybody's welcome here. You all have a valid point of view, but you're not here, to represent your bumper sticker. We're here to do this job for these people for these reasons. And I thought that was brilliant encapsulated. I just loved it.
Yep, I agree. That's a great example.
Yeah, it is. I thank you. I thought he was very wise in his leadership and how to lead a company to be long lasting so they didn't become fractionalized and people begin to split off because they were taking sides. It's no, we're a team. I mean, this is our goal. And I thought that's something I could learn from.
Yeah, I love that. Working in unity to a common goal. We're all here for the same reason and working towards the same goal. So we don't need to be frenemies, if you
Right.
will, in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. Which probably is a good place to end on our talk today, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great place. So to summarize, really what we went through, intentional growth, profitability, and caring about your positive impact in the world are not mutually exclusive concepts. And
Right.
there are key steps to consider your self-financed rate, it being a stepped, developed, methodical process, the willingness to adapt and change, and listen to what the marketplace is saying instead of thinking you have all the answers, constant innovation, small experiments, fail forward and fast, but continue to try new things. And then the great wisdom that you shared from the general, and then finally the governance piece that we just reviewed. So I really appreciated the entire conversation that we've had here today on building a company to last with the intention of also having a positive impact on the world around us versus just in it to make the money. And I'm looking forward to our future conversations. I think we have one coming up on the US dollar. We chatted about doing a panel type discussion on Bitcoin. So we got to reach out to a few people to see if we can rope in some panelists to join us for that.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Um, That will be fun. My role in the panel will be the average Joe Schmo who doesn't know much about it, and we'll be asking lots of questions. And then our goal is, Dad, you're going to be, and I say this with all the love of my heart, the older generation where you said it just may be too risky for you to take on that kind of investment right now at this point in your life. And then going to reach out to a couple of other people to see if we can balance it out with somebody who's very pro Bitcoin, and then somebody who is pro, but maybe a little bit more methodical in their approach to the subject. So it'll be an interesting panel. Anybody has questions about Bitcoin, please feel free to submit them to us. So that way I can make sure I relay those questions to the panel. I think that'll be in later this month in July that we'll be looking to do something like that.
Excellent. Excellent. And I'll be, yeah, you're right. I'll be that old curmudgeon sitting up there in the Muppets. And
And I'll be the clueless one, so it'll be fun. I'll sit up there with you with just a clueless look on my face.
All right. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You too. I'll talk to you later. Bye, everyone. Thanks for
Bye.
joining.